Chris Yandex, CYInterview covering Las Vegas and the world. We have an excellent opportunity today. Joining us is the one and only CYInterview sponsor, Rob Gill. Very soon his book, Surviving Success, is going to be released and you'll get a chance to learn about his life story. Mr. Gill is the founder of Epic Financial Strategies LLC and has his own youth basketball league, Epic Elite AU. Additionally, Rob just finished hosting a webinar a few weeks ago. Pro wrestler, UFC legend Ken Shamrock, pro wrestling superstar Mark Mero, reality star Abimbola Fernandez, former UCLA basketball star and former president of CBS Productions Andy Hill, and Las Vegas-based artist Jonathan Schultz have all had the opportunity to hear about surviving success from Mr. Rob Gill on CYInterview. Today we are going to dive deeper into the forthcoming book. Rob, thanks for joining us today for this special CYInterview. How are you?
What a tremendous intro. Thank you, Chris. How are you? Happy Thankful Thursday as we film this right now, and looking forward to today's conversation. Super excited.
I'm thankful to be here with you, Rob, as always, of course. So the question I just want to begin with is, I don't think we've asked this. When did you know you wanted to write Surviving Success? Like, when did that moment happen for you?
You know, I did want to, for a while, I've always wanted to tell my story and write a book, but I think I hired a new marketing team called No BS Marketing. That's their name. And they worked closely with Alexa just to get me, I just had to get off the ground. You know what I mean? So I want to say we started this process about a year ago. So it's taken about a year to get to this point. We're doing some final edits, but it was my life's journey through sobriety, money, what not to do, mistakes, how to learn from mistakes, how to get the mindset to create businesses, but then keep the money against every urge that I have to, you know, because of the way I was brought up, middle class, Bayonne, New Jersey, we didn't understand nor respect and treat money the way it should have been treated. So as I began to make money, subconsciously I did things to give it back, right? And I don't mean through charity work, but like through foolish mindset and foolish investment. So the book is about how to deploy capital, you know, from my perspective, of course, but also how to keep it and how to make it.
So we're going to get into all that in a couple of minutes, but first I want to ask you, what was the most challenging part of putting the book together for you?
You know, I think that, you know, I had to stick to a schedule, but sometimes if it's like, hey, we're going to write or we're going to do stuff on Thursday at 7 p.m., if I'm not inspired, I can't do it. So the challenging part was that once inspiration would hit me, whether it was 11 o'clock at night, 2 in the morning, or 8 a.m., I just had to run with it. So those were all unpredictable. You know, in other parts of my life, I can stick to a better schedule, but it was very challenging for me because I was talking about myself. And by the way, I was reliving some of my painful life experiences that I hadn't thought about in a long time. So, you know, I kind of stayed stuck on certain things. Then you start thinking about who you're going to thank and, you know, how do you position this the right way? And then you get into crazy self-talk. But I think for me, the major challenge was to not force inspiration. And once I stopped it and I just let it flow, it began to really, you know, speed up. And then we had some snags along the way, but we are where we are right now.
So coming from a family that had money challenges, what have you done and are you currently doing to overcome those wealth wounds you've spoken about here on CYInterview?
You know, first of all, the first thing you have to do is really forgive yourself. Number one, there could be folks that are watching this that may have made bad investments. But let's say their motive was really good, but the investment didn't work out for whatever reason. As an entrepreneur, don't lose that just because the first one didn't work, right? But Jay Bilstein always says it best, if it is to be, it's up to me. Now, remember, we all need teammates. We all need people that could help us. We can't do anything alone. But we are responsible for how we show up. And most importantly, we're responsible for how we respond to any kind of mistakes that we may make along the way. And living in the past is so detrimental to anybody's growth. You could either be going forward or backward. You can't do both at the same time. So I think for me, I had to forgive myself, my younger self, both in and out of sobriety. And early sobriety, I wasn't able to handle money, obviously, is my point. And be able to not worry about the emotional frustrations of the loved ones around me, if in fact I did make a mistake, but really be able to forgive myself and move forward and just trust for what my value is to the world. And that's to tell a simple story about, if I could do it, you could do it. And money is not the end all and be all, but it's a tool to help make the world a better place if it's handled the right way.
So I'm going to say to you then building off of that, I think social media may have created some unrealistic financial expectations for people. So what
Absolutely.
is your message to younger people who have come from a challenging background like you to find prosperity in their own life?
My first message, like if I'll do videos, if you're 20 years old, this is what I would do if I was 20 all over again. Who's your top five? Now, who's your top five in business mentorship? Who's your top five in health maintenance? Who's your top five in spirituality? Who's your top five in social settings? But let me just go top five in business. So if I could go see myself, the 20-year-old version of myself, who, by the way, was in a addiction of drugs and alcohol at that point, my first message would be, it's okay to get sober sooner than later. You don't have to wait. And then let's assume that I'm speaking to my 25-year-old self that's now sober, 26. I would say, who's the top five that you spend your time with? Because for me, even when I got sober early, I still spend time with folks that weren't best for me. And I certainly didn't have mentors besides Jay Bilstein, but he couldn't be everything. I didn't have the proper mentors that were kind of in my age space doing what I wanted to do, but with integrity. I couldn't find that. But if I looked, I would have found it. Like I would have read more. I would have invested more money into the real estate between my ears and really looked for application strategies. So, hey, if I read this book, I want to see the person that's doing this, right? So if I could do that all over again and just tell everybody to save 20% of every single check they get, that they can't touch it, it has to be in a separate account that's there for liquidity, then educate so you can deploy your capital properly.
When it comes to money, what is the most important lesson we're going to take away from this book?
It's not what you make, it's what you keep. In making money, don't hurt other people. It's never too late to build out a legacy, and ask yourself empowering questions, not questions like, hey, why does this keep happening to me? Or I don't want to do this investment because look what happened last time. But more like, what can I learn from this? How can I help make the world a better place? Not, I want to make $1 million so I could buy a boxing promotional company, but I want to make $1 million so I could teach other agents and the investment community the proper mindset they need to look at money before they deploy it or even open up a business.
Okay, so then what do you want the reader to take away from the book overall? Have you thought about that message yet?
Yeah, I think the book is inspirational. I think the book is it tells the truth about there's no such thing as overnight success, at least from our perspective, maybe somebody else's. It talks about sudden wealth syndrome. In other words, if you get an inheritance or come into a pile of money. It talks about, really some of the early people in my life. So people may be able to relate to this. I had the good fortune of seeing the Hurley family, the basketball legendary Hurley family up front. And I was nowhere even ready to see and handle what was in front of me. However, that version of my life, that time period, is to this moment in time. Even when you watch Danny Hurley celebrate his 2 championships. But let's not forget about Bobby Hurley, because when we were, Bobby's my age, and when he was 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, and 21, between St. Anthony's and Duke, he probably had 15 basketball losses, won 2 national championships, was a Final Four MVP. And I bring that up because he had the burden of the world on his shoulders. He was the first, right? The first is always the hardest. And, his challenges came after that, after the car accident, his life challenges, right? So whereas Danny's life challenges were being Bobby's little brother, and then all of a sudden he, had to go through his own crisis, but slow and steady, cinched by the inch. He became a high school coach for 12, 13 years. Then he made it to Wagner. Meanwhile, we know his dad's the greatest high school coach, if not one of the greatest coaches in history of basketball. And all of a sudden he stepped into his greatness, right? But he had the benefit of what not to do, right? He had the benefit of, his older brother coming into a large amount of money, right? And they were very good as a family. They were great with money. I just want to be clear about that. There was no wealth wound habits that were passed down to Bobby and Danny, for sure. They were smart about money, unlike my situation. But in the end, though, you still have to be able to handle money with a level of maturity. And it's very difficult for these athletes. It's very difficult for young entrepreneurs if, in fact, they've never done it in the first place. So, just watching the journey is so incredible. And by the way, I'm not sitting here saying I'm on the phone every day with Bobby and Danny, because I'm not. I mean, they're My older sister is their aunt through marriage, right? However, I am so close in proximity to where it used to be and where it is now. That information is so powerful in my world, and I even talk about it a little about it in the book, because every single person is going to come across people in their life that are great examples of what to do and how to build something special. I just happen to be lucky enough to see, basketball royalty sometimes at some of our holiday and summer party dinners. I was lucky enough. And at the time I couldn't, even though I played basketball, I didn't take advantage of it. I was, it was so far ahead of me that I felt like I wasn't good enough. And when you feel a certain way, you manifest that, right? And, but it wasn't until I got sober and I saw what Coach Hurley did and I saw all the work Bobby and Danny did that it really kind of gave me the motivation at that point in my life when I met Jay Bilstein, which was 400 dials a day. It's no different than 400 jumpers a day. If you do it every day with intensity, you're going to get better. And Jay happened to be one of the greatest gifts as I got sober in my life, a guardian, an angel that I was able to say, okay, that's what they did. I could do this here. And then, 15, 20 years later, I began to just get more and more. I had some financial success, but emotionally, I was devoid around 2009, 10, 11, and 12. Still didn't pick up a drink. But then I had to work on who I was. And then it wasn't until there was a major shift in my business that I discovered Tony Robbins, Money Masters of the Game. Loved that book. But I saw I always understood marketing, but I couldn't write it out for anybody. But I understood the power of a handoff. In other words, Chris, if you say something good about me versus if I say something good about me, it's going to be better coming from you, right? So how do I get a lot of people to say good things about me? Tony wrote, and this is it. Tony gave value to the investment community that they weren't hearing on Wall Street. He educated folks on fees, educated folks on saving money, everything you have to do, proper planning. But he also had a link in his book. So that meant everyone that read his book was going to click the link and go to the RIA that he was working with for a free consultation, right? By the way, we have links in the book. So my point is, from that perspective, I said, wait a minute, this guy's on stage. He's got, 1 million, 2, 3 million followers. He's speaking in front of people all over the place. I'm going to go to a Tony Robbins event. This is the Ego Rob, and become his insurance division, right? So I go there, Chris. It's Newark in July of 2017. And within like 10 minutes, I realized I'm not going to be Tony's partner, because I found myself in like a Final Four setting. The arena was packed. And but I watched him perform for 3 straight days, which was 4 days actually, but he was on for 2 of the 4. It was incredible. It then led me to Sean Callaghy, who then led me to Chris Crone, whose marketing model is what, basically really kind of was exactly what I envisioned with Tony Robbins, except he was doing it from a real estate perspective. We opened up our own RIA, but all of our branding and marketing on social media is on the insurance side. And that's where we are today, years later. So, in 2010, I made my first 7 figures, but then in the last 2 years, I made double that amount. Instead of $1 million, over 2. But once again, the ego came in, but I caught it much faster this time. As I was writing the book, I caught it much faster. So it's interesting, because as I'm writing the book, I had the good fortune of people that told me the truth around me. And thank God, because I didn't discover it on my own, but I accepted it faster than I would have, let's say, 10 years or 15 years ago, where my ego would have definitely broken up a relationship or 2.
So how much are we going to hear about the basketball inspiration in your book?
It's early on. It's remember, the book is about mindset. The book, so the basketball inspiration is the story that was in the 80s into the 90s that, I did play college basketball, but at that point I was drinking and I was drugging. So it was only 2 years. The real inspiration came with my 2 sons when I wanted to start an AAU program. When you run a business, any business person that's watching this understands that 2 things: proximity is power, but the way you could turn decades into days is to bring the right mavens and contributors around you. So I'm not a basketball coach. I love basketball. I can watch it from the sidelines. I can see a foul. I can see plays developing, but I'm not an X and O coach. So what I did was, I connected with 3 of the best coaches here in New Jersey, collectively over 1,600 wins, over 15 players in the NBA. And I had them advise me on what to do, right? And as a result of it, I was able to kind of go from my sons, who I love, I adore, but they are brought up with privilege in a way that I wasn't. So I don't understand their challenge. Besides being a teenager, I don't understand they don't have the money challenges I had, right? They have brand new cars. They have a money in a debit card. They have an Apple credit card. They have stuff that I never had. But a lot of these kids that we brought here remind me of who I was 30 and 40 years ago. So I felt like it was my mission to really talk to them. And I built out a financial literacy course for all my kids that are inside of AAU. Because the truth is, less than 1% would make it to the NBA. And even then 80% go bankrupt. Why not teach kids the game of entrepreneurship? Because athletes who do practice, drill, and rehearse every day, it's kind of what entrepreneurs do. They live on a different, they go by a different set of rules. So if a kid that's 16, 17, 18, if I could tap into his entrepreneur side now, and social media could be harmful, but it could be a gift, right? Depending on how that tool is used. These kids, when basketball is done, may be able to become smart businessmen as a result of the impact that I'm sharing with them based on my journey. And, for me, one day, if I'm, 15, 20 years from now, kids are inviting me to weddings, or if a kid all of a sudden is a billionaire and employs 2,000 people and he's making the world a better place, then I know I did my job. Besides my family, like that's my number one job, obviously. But I think the gifts I have go far beyond just my wife and kids.
I understand that. So in closing, release date, where's it going to be released? Have you decided yet where the distribution is going to be?
Well, I mean, I know that there's a link where you can get a copy now, which I could share. The final
edits, share that.
Yep, the final edits are happening real time. So I think another week or two, easily.
I'm just going to say, in closing, Rob, the book sounds like a movie or a streaming series. How raw would it be? How great would that be for you if that happened?
First of all, I mean, listen, that would be amazing. That's not why I did it. But when I always take a back seat. I'm like, well, yeah, but I think the Hurley story is a much better movie, right? Like one of the children winning 2 national championships as a player, one as a coach. The father is the greatest coach in history. I always say this jokingly, but I am serious. I'm just Rob from Bayonne. Happen to have great teachers around me. I finally started listening. As a result of it, I did things that other kids that I came up with may not have done to the same extent. And, I've been lucky enough to have a family. I've been lucky enough to live a life without alcohol, without drugs, versus a life that I did with illegal drugs and alcohol. So I think that for me, it would be great. I would be flattered, but the message, and if it happens, who would say no to that? But the truth is, I was inspired to do this because I wanted to talk to the parent and the kid. That I wanted to talk to my parents when I wrote this book. If they could have read this book when they first started having children, right? If I could have gotten a hold of this book when I was in 8th grade, the audio version, whatever, because there is an audio version too. That's who I was speaking to when I wrote this book.
Well, I can't wait to read it, Rob, and I know that a lot of people on CYInterview can't wait to read it, and we can't wait to talk about surviving success with other guests like we have in the past. And so we are so anxious to get the release date, Rob, and the minute that we get it, we'll let everybody know, of course. So for CYInterview sponsor, by the way, Rob, just before I close, you're the king of Bayonne. Don't you know that?
No, I'm one of the members, but thank you. I appreciate that.
You really are.
If I claim to be the king of Bayonne, there'll be people knocking on my door within 20 minutes of the release of this video.
Well, yeah, that would be great, though. Then you can hand them but then you can hand them a copy of your book.
No, there's a lot of love. Listen, I love Bayonne. Bayonne is why I'm here.
Understandable. Yep. So for CYInterview sponsor, again, the founder of Epic Financial Strategies LLC and his own youth basketball league, Rob Gill, thanks for joining us on CYInterview today.
Yeah, thank you, Chris. I appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you for watching today's CYInterview segment from Las Vegas. Please hit the like button and please hit the subscribe button to be updated on all future CYInterview content from Las Vegas and beyond.